Have you ever met someone so powerful, so calculating, that they can tear down their enemies without ever raising their voice? No shouting, no threats, no empty promises. Just a cold, silent force that leaves people shattered and confused, wondering how it all fell apart. This isn't some thriller or fiction. This is the essence of Machiavelli, the master strategist whose ideas have shaped politics, power, and human nature for centuries. Niccolò Machiavelli was more than just a writer or a philosopher. He was a man who understood the invisible games played behind closed doors, the silent battles where words are often weapons, but silence is the deadliest tool of all. In his world, true power wasn't about who spoke the loudest or who showed the most force. It was about subtlety, patience, and an ability to destroy reputations, alliances, and even entire lives without ever having to say a single word. Imagine a figure so adept at reading people, so skilled at manipulating the delicate threads of influence that his mere presence could crumble the strongest opponents. He didn't need speeches or grand declarations. His power was in his silence, an intimidating calm that made others act out of fear, doubt, or confusion. This was the kind of power Machiavelli wrote about, the kind that still echoes today in politics, business, and everyday life. But who exactly was this man behind the cold strategies? What motivated him to understand power in such a raw, ruthless way? And how do his lessons still apply when people want to succeed or survive in a world full of manipulation and silent wars? These questions have fascinated thinkers for hundreds of years and remain shockingly relevant in our modern world. In this video, we will dive deep into the mind of Machiavelli, exploring the stories, the lessons, and the subtle tactics that made him infamous and timeless. You'll discover why he believed silence could be a weapon sharper than any sword, and how people today unknowingly use his principles to gain or lose everything without uttering a word. As we peel back the layers, you'll start to see the hidden power dynamics in your own life. The quiet wars happening at work, in friendships, and in politics. The question is, are you the one wielding this silent power, or are you the one being quietly destroyed without even realizing it? The world Machiavelli revealed is not a place for the faint-hearted. It's a place where words often fail, but silence conquers. And as we unravel this story, you'll be left wondering, how far would you go to win a battle that doesn't require a single sound? Stay with me, because this is just the beginning. The silence that destroys isn't empty. It's full of meaning. And the next part will reveal exactly how this power works, why it terrifies, and what it means for you. To truly understand why Machiavelli's silent power was so devastating, we have to look at the world he lived in, a time when Italy was a patchwork of city-states, constantly at war, full of betrayal and shifting alliances. Power wasn't just something you earned with battles or speeches, it was something you controlled in shadows, behind closed doors, where every glance, every pause, every unspoken word could change a person's fate. Machiavelli didn't just observe this world, he lived it. He was an insider, a diplomat, someone who saw firsthand how rulers rose and fell, not just by force, but by the invisible hands pulling strings in silence. Machiavelli understood that the loudest threats could be ignored, but the quietest actions often hit the hardest. A look from the right person, a rumor whispered at the right time, a carefully timed absence. These were his tools. He saw how people destroyed their enemies without confrontation, how reputations were shattered slowly, almost invisibly, until nothing was left but silence and ruin. That kind of destruction was terrifying because it was unpredictable and unseen. You could never defend yourself against something you didn't hear coming. This was more than just political strategy. It was a way to control people's minds and emotions without them realizing it. Machiavelli knew the human heart was fragile, driven by fear, ambition, and desire. and by using silence and subtlety, you could break someone's spirit without ever speaking harsh words. This invisible power was more dangerous than armies or swords because it left no scars to heal, only empty spaces where trust and hope used to be. But how did Machiavelli himself apply these ideas? Was he merely a thinker writing from a distance, or did he live by these rules, walking the fine line between friend and foe? That question is still debated by historians and scholars. Some say he was a cold manipulator who enjoyed pulling strings. Others see him as a realist forced to survive in a brutal world. What is clear, though, is that his teachings go beyond his own life. They seep into the way people handle power today, in politics, business, and even personal relationships. As you listen to this story, pay attention to the silent forces around you. Notice the moments when words are held back, but damage is done anyway. Because in the world, Machiavelli revealed, silence is never empty. It's full of meaning and intent. The next part will explore specific examples of this silent destruction in action, revealing how the quietest moves can bring down the mightiest opponents. But for now, remember this: the most dangerous power is the one you never hear coming. The true battle Machiavelli described was rarely fought with swords or loud commands. It was a war of shadows, played out in the quiet corners of rooms and the subtle shifts of power between allies and enemies. Imagine a trusted advisor suddenly falling out of favor, not because of an argument or a public accusation, but because someone whispered doubts in the right ears at the right time. Slowly, that person's influence fades, their support dries up, and before they realize what's happening, they're isolated, all without a single harsh word spoken. This is the silent destruction Machiavelli mastered. What makes this power so frightening is that it works beneath the surface of everyday life. It isn't limited to rulers or politicians. It happens in boardrooms, offices, and even families. Sometimes it's a glance that cuts deeper than any insult, a calculated silence that freezes someone out, or a carefully placed rumor that undermines trust. The person wielding this power doesn't need to confront you directly. The damage is done through uncertainty and fear, making you question your own position and allies. But there's another side to this story. Not everyone is a victim. Some recognize the silent game and use it to their advantage. They learn to read the signs, to sense the quiet shifts, and even to fight back with their own silent moves. This dance of power and counterpower creates a complex web where trust is fragile and alliances are always at risk. The deeper you go, the more you realize that in Machiavelli's world, silence can protect as much as it can destroy. As this story unfolds, you'll meet characters who are both players and pawns in this silent game, caught between survival and ambition. Their choices, made without a word, will shape their fate. But will it be victory or ruin? The answers lie just beyond the silence, waiting to be uncovered. The tension had been growing slowly, almost imperceptibly, like the quiet before a storm. Everyone in the room felt it, though no one dared to say it aloud. The silence was thick, heavy with unspoken fears and hidden intentions. Behind polite smiles and calm faces, alliances were shifting like sand, and trust was cracking under the pressure of unseen forces. In Machiavelli's world, these moments were where true power was tested, not through bold moves, but through patience and the careful tightening of invisible nooses. The man at the center of it all didn't need to raise his voice or issue commands. His presence alone was enough to unsettle the strongest allies and send rivals scrambling. He destroyed people without saying a word because the fear he inspired was louder than any threat. It was the silence that spoke, the silence that made people question everything they thought they knew, their friends, their safety, their very future. And that fear, that doubt, was the weapon he wielded with deadly precision. Around him, others played their parts, some aware of the game, others caught off guard. The quiet manipulations, the withheld information, the subtle gestures, all built toward a breaking point. It was like watching a chess match where every move was hidden, every piece cloaked in shadow. No one could predict who would fall first or who would emerge victorious. The stakes were higher than ever, and the slightest misstep could mean total destruction. As the story reaches this critical moment, the question isn't just who will win, but who will survive the silent war. The power to destroy without words is a terrifying force, and soon everything will be laid bare. But for now, the silence holds its breath, waiting to unleash the consequences that have been building in the shadows. What happens next will shock you, and the answers are closer than you think. Just when it seemed the silent war had reached its peak, a new, unexpected force entered the scene, one that no one saw coming. The man who had seemed untouchable, the master of quiet destruction, suddenly found himself facing an adversary just as cunning but far more unpredictable. This wasn't a straightforward challenge. It was a twist in the game, a hidden player revealing themselves only when the stakes were highest. Suddenly, the carefully balanced web of influence began to unravel faster than anyone imagined. The new player didn't confront with noise or fury. Instead, they used the same weapon, silence, but twisted it into something even more dangerous: uncertainty. Allies who had stood firm began to hesitate, unsure whom to trust. Rumors started to swirl, not loud enough to be outright accusations, but sharp enough to create cracks in the strongest defenses. The power dynamics shifted overnight. What was once a slow, controlled game became a chaotic storm of suspicion and fear. This escalation threw everyone into a deeper kind of conflict, where every move carried more risk. The quiet manipulations that once seemed safe were now potential traps. The man who had destroyed others without a word now had to watch his back, wary of silent attacks coming from every direction. His own tactics, honed over years, were suddenly not enough. The stakes were higher than ever, and the cost of failure was no longer just loss of power, but complete annihilation. Behind the scenes, the tension grew unbearable. Trusted friends became potential enemies, and old rivals found new reasons to strike. The lines between truth and deception blurred, making it impossible to know who was truly in control. This invisible war wasn't just about winning anymore, it was about survival. Every silence held a secret, every glance carried a threat. The fragile peace shattered, replaced by a dangerous uncertainty that left everyone on edge. As this story pushes toward its climax, the silent forces at play reveal their deadliest form. The conflict escalates beyond personal rivalries into a battle of wits and wills where the consequences will change everything. What happens next will test the limits of power, trust, and human nature itself. The silent destruction Machiavelli warned about is no longer just a strategy, it's a reality, unfolding before your eyes in ways more shocking than you could ever imagine. The air was thick with tension as everything came to a head. The silent war, fought in shadows and whispers, reached a point where the invisible walls finally crumbled. The man who had destroyed so many without uttering a word now faced his greatest challenge. The very uncertainty he once used to his advantage turned against him. Allies he believed loyal withdrew silently, while foes who once lurked in the background stepped forward, their quiet power unleashed. The delicate balance shattered, and the silent battlefield became a storm of exposed intentions. In the center of this chaos, the new adversary revealed their ultimate move, not a loud declaration, but a quiet, devastating betrayal. With a single gesture, a message, or even just the absence of support at the crucial moment, the man who wielded silence found himself isolated. The power he thought was his shield was now the cage that trapped him. Every silent glance, every withheld word had turned into a weapon aimed squarely at his downfall. It was a harsh reminder that in Machiavelli's world, silence could build kingdoms, but it could also bring them crashing down. Yet just as it seemed that all was lost, an unexpected ally emerged from the shadows. Someone who had played the long game quietly, watching and waiting, now stepped into the light. Their intervention didn't come with fanfare or noise, but with a subtle shift that changed everything. The game was far from over. The silent war had a new player, and with their arrival the stakes rose higher than anyone had imagined. The man who thought he controlled the silence was now forced to confront the reality that power was never absolute. It was always fragile, always shifting. But the final twist came when it became clear that this new player wasn't there to save or destroy. They had their own agenda. In the silence that followed, a question hung in the air. Who really holds the power when words are few and actions are hidden? The answer was no longer simple, no longer tied to one person or one plan. The silent destruction Machiavelli warned about had become a living, breathing force, unpredictable and unstoppable. And as the dust settled, the audience was left with a chilling realization. In a world where silence speaks louder than words, the greatest danger is never knowing who is truly listening or waiting to strike next. In the quiet aftermath of the storm, the true nature of power revealed itself, not as something fixed or absolute, but as a shifting dance between presence and absence, sound and silence. The man who had once destroyed people without saying a word learned, in the end, that silence could be a double-edged sword. It could build influence, yes, but it could also isolate, confuse, and even destroy the wielder if left unchecked. His story became a lesson in how fragile control really is, especially when trust is fragile and the stakes are high. The unexpected ally who stepped into the shadows showed that sometimes the quietest voices carry the most weight. Not through loud proclamations or bold moves, but through patience, observation, and timing. This shift in power reminded everyone watching that in the silent wars of life, whether in politics, business, or relationships, the game is never truly over. The players change, the rules bend, and the only certainty is uncertainty itself. As the dust settled, the subplots intertwined, revealing that everyone had a role in this invisible struggle. Friends who became foes, rivals who became allies, and all those caught in between learned that silence isn't emptiness. It's a language, one that can protect or destroy, reveal or conceal. Understanding this language and learning to read the quiet signals around us is as important now as it was in Machiavelli's time. So what can we take away from this story? Power is not just about what is said or done openly. Often, it's about what remains unsaid. The real strength lies in knowing when to speak and when to remain silent. The world Machiavelli described still exists today, hidden in the spaces between words, in the pauses, and in the subtle moves behind the scenes. If we can learn to recognize these silent forces, we can better navigate the complex webs of influence that shape our lives. In the end, the silent destruction that once seemed so mysterious is simply a reflection of human nature itself. Complex, unpredictable, and always evolving. And while the silence may hold secrets and dangers, it also holds power. The question is, what will you do when the silence speaks? Because in this world, silence is never just silence. It is the loudest voice of all.